Hey guys, today I'm going to teach you how to set up a skin shader, set up hair, eyes and eyelashes inside Blender. The result is going to look something like what's on the screen now. What we did in the last video was we brought everything into Blender from Clo3d. So we've set up the materials for our garment, we've set up a little world light and everything, and now we're ready to add the avatar into the scene. Before we add the avatar, I'm just going to go over to our original Daz file. So if I go into Daz, this is my avatar that I want to bring into Blender. So for now, I'm just going to go to File, Export, and then choose an output folder for this, and just call it Avatar. Let's call it that win. And then I'm going to leave these settings as they are, because centimeters was useful for Clo3d, but we can change this when we bring it into Blender. And I'm just going to click Export. So this has now exported my avatar with all the hair and everything attached to it. I've got applied to this. If I look here at what's parented to my avatar in Daz, I've got the eyelashes, the hair, and some shoes and some eyebrows. So all of this has been now exported and we can import this into Blender. So if we go back to our scene from before, I'm going to go to File, Import, select OBJ, and then go to my export folder. Before I bring this in, my scaling in Daz was set to centimeters, so I'm going to change this scale value here to 0.01, which will set this to the right scaling for Blender, which is meters. So I'll import this. And now my avatar is in the scene along with my garments as well. I'm using the same pose as before, so everything's lined up. This is what I used inside Clo3d as well to build this look with. And now I have eyebrows, I have the avatar, I have eyelashes, I have the shoes, and I have the hair as well. So with all these selected in the right side, I'm just going to press M on the keyboard to create a new collection and put these in a collection called Avatar. And now I can turn off the visibility of this avatar in one collection. To start to build this shader, we won't need to find the texture files that are being used inside Daz, which is very easy to do. So I'll go back to Daz. I'm going to select my character, and on the side go to Surfaces in the outliner right here, and then select the character that we're working with. And then if we drop this menu down, we can look under Skin, Lips, and Nails, and we can see what we've got here. Surfaces, and then let's just choose one of these arms, for example. If you keep dropping these menus down, you'll eventually get to the texture for each individual part of the mesh. So this is just the arms, but what I want to do is, if I click one of these image inputs here, there's quite a few different image inputs being used. If I choose one and I click browse, this will bring me to the location in my computer where all these texture files are saved. So I can copy this path now. I'm just going to copy this path to where these files are. And I'm going to go back to Blender, and in the bottom panel here, this is currently set to a timeline, but we have no animation, so I don't really need this. I'm just going to change this to a file browser on the side here. So I choose file browser. And then I can actually clean this up a bit, paste this path here. And if I change this to like the icon view, I think it's called, display thumbnails, we can see now all the textures that we can work with. So I could just drag and drop these into the node space now. That'll work for the skin. And all the eyes and the eyelashes and everything, those textures are all contained in this folder. The other one we want to work with is the hair as well, so we'll do the same for the hair, but for now let's see what we've got here. So now the render is coming through as pink because Blender can't find any textures associated with this. So to view the materials, you can go to the material outliner on the side, the material properties on the side here. And these are all my materials. These are for the hair. These are all associated to the hair because I've got the hair selected right now. If I go to my character, I've got all these different options as well. I think what we could start by doing is the face. So if we set the node group up for the face, then we can apply this to everything else. So I'm just going to turn off the visibility of the eyelashes, turn off the shoes, the garments even, and the hair. So we're just looking at our avatar right now. And if we look on the right side of the screen, we've got all these different material slots, and they're all allowing us to attach these texture maps to each material slot. There's more material slots than texture maps. So if you see the face, lips, teeth, torso, ears, legs, I don't have one for lips. I use the face one. You know, there's not a separate map for this, so we can start to combine some of these materials. I'm going to leave the lips separate because we might want to control them by themselves. But for example, the ears you see on these texture maps in the bottom here, the ears are in the top. So I can combine the ears to the face so that I'm not working with multiple materials. So I'm going to press the up key on the material order here to just move ears under face. And then if I press minus, face and ears should now be connected. So if I choose face and I look at the material setup here, Blender is trying to find a diffuse texture that's not there. We're going to drag this in from the outliner in the bottom. So I'm just going to delete this node here and I'm going to drag over the diffuse with the eyebrows in it. There's one here with like no eyebrows, and I'm just going to take the one with the eyebrows. I can actually turn off this eyebrows is mesh. This isn't the texture, so I'm going to turn off the visibility of those eyebrows as well. So now we're just looking at the face. And as you see, the face and the ears are now connected. We've got one material slot for both of these, and I'm just going to connect this diffuse texture here to the base color here. And now we have the base color applied. It doesn't look like skin just yet. It's the right color, but we have some work to do to fix this. This has given us like now just the base color. What we can do next is start to build up. We can add this specular. So if we drag this one over here and connect this to the specular input here, we can change the color space here as well to non-color. And then we can take this bump map here as well. So let's take the bump map. B for bump, D for diffuse, S for specular, SSS for subsurface scattering. Again, B for bump. There's a little bit of a system going on here in the way these files are made in Daz, so you'll understand them as we go along. This is the bump, and if you've done any texturing before, you'll know we need to create a bump node. So I'm going to press Shift and A and search for a bump. Add the bump node here. Connect the color output of the bump node to the height input, and then connect the normal to the normal of the principled shader, and you see we now have like a bump texture happening on the face. The color space needs to be non-color, and the strength is way too high, so we bring this right down. Okay. We then want to add the normal map in, and the normal map is this one, O-in-8 face NM for normal. Drop that in the bottom. Press Shift and A and search for a normal map node. Connect the output of this, the color output to the color input of the normal map node. Connect normal to bump normal, and set this color space again to non-color. And now we should have our bump and normal map connected to the face. So again, if we increase this value, we'll get much more bump happening. Yeah, we're going to fine tune this later, but now at least we've got everything connected. What we could also do at this point is look at the eyes. So there's a lot of different components you will see for the eyes. We have eye socket, pupils, eye moisture, cornea, and other aspects that we need to consider as well. We're just going to do a really quick setup for the eye to not look at these scary white eyes. And I'm going to go to the eye moisture first. So choose the eye moisture on the side and turn the transmission of this all the way up. And you'll see now we have visibility of what's underneath this. I'm also going to turn the roughness all the way down. And we should have this kind of glossy look on the front of the eye. For the iris, we can remove this texture here that's being input, and we can choose one of the eye colors that we like. So let's say the blue one. We can connect this to the base color of the iris, which is not visible currently. I think we can, if we choose the cornea and turn the alpha down, yeah. The cornea is going to sit on the front of the eye. So again, we can add transmission to this to make it transparent, turn the roughness down to make it glossy, and then reduce the alpha a bit to make it a bit more transparent. And now we're starting to see the iris. The pupil, I'm just going to take off this base color input node that's been attached automatically and just change the color to black. So now we have a black pupil. And for the back of the eye, I'm going to choose this one, the sclera. I mean, I don't know how to pronounce that. And then just connect again one of these eye color that we have before. And now we have the eye color in the back as well. This isn't totally finished, but again, we can come back to this and fine tune it. But now at least we're looking at some eyes. The last thing is the eye socket to fix this little pink thing in the center of the eye here. So I think for the eye socket, we can use the face texture. So if I just move this eye socket material up underneath face and then press the minus button, this is now being textured by the face material, so that's fine. I think for the eye moisture, I'm just going to reduce the alpha on this a little bit so that we see more of the whites of the eye coming through. So that's just a really quick way to set up the eye shader with a bit of gloss on it. But back to the skin. So if we go back to face, we have 4 nodes that we're currently working with, and we want to create some roughness on this. And the best way to do this will be to work with the node that we've used here, the specular. So because we don't have a roughness map native from the render engine of Daz, we're going to create one inside Blender right now. And like I said, we're going to use this this specular image texture right here. So I'm going to press Shift and A to search for a bump node and drop that in here. Take the color output of this specular and drop it in the, no, I'm not applying a bump, I need a ramp, a color ramp. Drop the color ramp here, set the output of the specular map to the input of the color ramp, and then set this into the roughness slot. And initially this is going to be quite shiny if we look at this close up. Just to be clear, I'm working, if I look in my render properties right now, I'm using cycles and I'm using GPU. I could look at this in Eevee and it might render a bit quicker, but in general, this might be more accurate to do looking through the cycles. So just to be clear, I'm using cycles right now. Back to the materials. Yeah, this looks a bit glossy in areas. So what we can do is actually invert this and see how it looks if we switch the black and white inputs here. So this feels like a nicer tone on the skin now. I'm just going to drag this black slider down a little bit to give it a little bit more shine, and then press plus to add a gray slider in, and I'm just going to push this gray one up. So now we're really starting to get a bump on the surface of this skin that's looking like pores, that's looking quite detailed. Again, use your normal map and your bump map to kind of control the amount of skin grain that we're getting here. But what we want to start to create now is some translucency, some subsurface scattering. And the way that we can do that is to work with the subsurface scattering image input here. So I'm just going to create some space between all these nodes. Just drop down the bump and the normal, and I'll just push up the specular and the roughness, and I'm going to drop in this subsurface scattering texture here, so the SSS. And I'm going to drop this color into the subsurface color here. So if I just drag this node out a little, you can see subsurface color. And I'm going to input that there, and right now we don't have change because we need to increase this subsurface value. So when we're talking about subsurface scattering, or SSS as it is here, this is what we mean. So when you see light shining through some skin, you will see this pink light come through, and this is because of the way that the light is scattering around inside the object. Right now with this light, we don't see anything kind of coming through the ear, for example, where you would expect this thing to happen, that we see light pass through the back of this ear. Um, Take a look at this online, but we want to figure out a way of setting this up. So one way we can do it is to use subsurface here. So if I zoom in on this subsurface value and I increase this, um, you'll see what happens. We get the scattering of light throughout the object, but it becomes very intense very quickly. So we want to set this to an extremely low value, maybe 0.08, for example, to start off with. And then I'm just going to spin my world light around. So now I'm in the shader space for my object with the object space selected here. If I go to world and I look at my world image input here, I have this mapping node set up so I can spin my HDRI environment around. I'm just going to set the light behind the character. So you see now with this subsurface activated, I do get a bit of this light scattering through the ear, for example. So I'm going to go back to object up here and look at what happens again if we increase this. If we turn it off, there's no light coming through whatsoever. If I turn it on a very small amount, we get a little bit of this light coming through, and if I increase it, it becomes quite thin looking almost. So this can stay at a very, very low value. Let's try 0.007. That's fine for now. What we want to add as well is a bit of translucency into this, because the skin is also translucent, and we're going to use a mix shader to do this. So if you press Shift and A and search for a mix shader, and then you press Shift and A and search for a translucent, not transparent, a translucent BSDF, and take your SSS image texture here and take that output and connect it to the input of our translucent BSDF. And just to see what's happening here, if I press Control, Shift, and left click on my keyboard, I can see just what's happening with this translucent texture here. And right now it's creating a lot of translucency, and we want to kind of darken this up maybe. We'll see the effect of the mix first, and then we'll see how we can adjust it, but this is what the translucent shader is going to do. So we want to see the output of the mix shader, so I'm going to press Control, Shift, and click the mix shader, and then connect to the mix shader, in the bottom the translucent, and in the top our texture. And now we've got a half and half combination of these two shaders. So we've got half of this texture is coming from this shader, and half of this is coming from this shader. If we want to change this, we can go all the way to the left, and now we're just looking at the skin shader. And if we go all the way to the right, we're just looking at the translucent. So if I set this to 0.25, I'm going to get a little bit of translucency happening in this as well. It's going to be quite subtle, and it's something that we can control. But what this gives us now is more of this effect and more light passing through the skin, rather than it looking like a flat, opaque kind of surface. So again, we can increase the translucency here if we want to, or decrease it. What I would do as well is add this connection here from the subsurface scattering to the translucent shader. Press Shift and A and search for an RGB curves, and just drop this into that connection. So we've got a curve, an RGB curve in between the translucent BSDF and the subsurface scattering texture for the skin. With this, we can kind of darken up the image texture that's being used for the translucency to make it feel a bit warmer and less red, and less kind of the cold thing that was happening before. So you see now this is darker, and before we were like here. So if I bring this down, it's going to look more like the red inside of skin, as opposed to this kind of papery feeling that we get right here. Okay. If I turn this back down, yeah, this is giving us a nice kind of skin right now. We're getting some subsurface scattering, and we've got a nice bump and a nice kind of look across the skin here as well. So I'm quite happy with this right now. And what we want to do at this point is create a node group so that we can apply this to all the other areas of our avatar. And we want the node group to group everything in the center of this and not the image texture inputs. So I'm going to highlight all these image texture inputs and just drag them to the side of it. And the material output we're going to put over here. And it's these guys that we want to put into a group so that we can then transfer this group into any other project or any other material. So if I highlight these and I right click and I hit group, we've now kind of gone into the group, and these are the materials that we're working with. And these are our group inputs. So if I go to the top here and I have this kind of up arrow and I press this, I'll go back into the space I was before. So now I have my image texture inputs, I have my material output, and we can now use this node in any of our other materials that we'd like to work with. So if you hit N on the keyboard to make this side menu come out, and we click on our node group here that we just created and go to node, in the top we can change this name to skin shader, for example, and then this will now be named skin shader. Like we put in the label as well. Yeah, now we're named skin shader. So with this, we can check in on a couple of things. We've got a specular input, we've got a subsurface color input, we've got a height input, and then this one is just named color, and this is actually the normal map input. So we could rename this normal instead of color. And to do that, we're going to click here on these two nodes connected to go into the node group. And then if we go to group, we can look under inputs, the name of these inputs on the side. Under color, if you double click and just put normal map, this will now read as normal map outside of the node group. So I'm going to go back up, click this arrow to go back up out of the node group, and here we have a normal map. So we have a base color input, a specular input, a height input, a normal map input, and a subsurface color input. And now all we need to do is open this node in another material slot, connect the materials that we need, and we're good to go. So the next one we will do is the lips. For the lips, we want to actually work with the face, these same textures. So as you see, the lips are on the face texture. So what we can actually do for lips is copy all these nodes. So I'm going to highlight everything, drag select, press Control and C on the keyboard, and then go to the lips material. Delete all the nodes that are there already. The lips will turn black because there's no shader information for them. And then paste those nodes again. And now our lips look like the rest of our face, and it's looking much better. I think I'll just spin this light around again, go back to world, and spin the light more to the front of the face, like this. Okay, so now we can see the lips are working as well. If you find yourself zooming in on the face and the camera's like feeling distorted, if you press N on this side of the screen to open the menu, go to view, and then change the focal length to a higher number, and then zoom back out, you'll have a nicer kind of focal length compared to when it's set to 50 by default. Okay, so just a hint there. Now we've got most of the skin set up. We can do the same thing now for the torso, let's say. So let's go to the torso. I'm going to go back into object here. So this is the object I'm working with. Torso. We can delete this node and we can delete this node. So we keep a material output. Press Shift and A and search for a skin. And because we've now made this node, okay, so if I go search and I search for node group, I've actually got the node group here. This should be renamed to skin shader by now because here we've renamed it skin. So if I just save this file, it should update this. But in theory now, if we go to, for example, the torso and we press Shift and A and search for a skin shader, it's not there. It's still called node group. I don't know why, but here, yeah, this is the node group that we're working with. We're going to connect the shader to surface, and then we're going to apply our textures here as well. But now we need to use the textures for the torso. So this is the diffuse for the torso. This is the bump for the torso, subsurface scattering, specular, and in the top is the normal right here. So we got all these together, and we just need to now quickly connect them to the node group that we've made. So again, if you rename this and it's not called skin shader, just press Shift and A and search for node group, and all the node groups that you make will become available in your add menu now. Okay, so diffuse to base color, bump into height, subsurface scattering into this one, normal into this one, and specular into this one. And what we just need to check is that we set our color spaces correctly, because if you look now, these look different because our color spaces are not correct. So for the specular, set this to non-color. For the normal, set this to non-color. For the subsurface scattering, you can leave this RGB. For the height, set this again to non-color. And for the base color, you can leave this as sRGB. So now we have really got most of this skin texture set up. We would repeat this process for all the other areas of the avatar. So you would then create this for the arms. So go to your arms material slot here, drag in your arms textures, delete the nodes that are existing, Shift and A and search for your node group that you've created before, connect everything together to your material output like we've already done, and go through one by one all of these materials until we finished finished all these inputs. So I'll quickly do that, and then I'll show you guys how this will be when it's finished. So now everything should be connected for all of our different material parts of the avatar. I've combined the toenails with the legs and the fingernails with the arms because they're all being read in the same material. So if you look here, the legs and the toenails are together, and so are the arms and the fingernails. The sclera has an image texture input on it. The iris also has an image texture input on it, and the cornea and the eye moisture do not. So they are being set to like glass textures so that we can like see through the transparency of the eye. So that's just a note on this. The next thing we're going to look at is the hair. So if I turn on the visibility of the hair, when we work with the hair, we're going to do the same thing. Go into Daz, choose your hair, go to the surfaces on the side, so click surfaces here, choose a part of the mesh, so back is fine, click browse, click this browse button right here, and then copy this file path. So this is the file path for all of our hair textures right now. Back in Daz, in this browse, this file browser in the bottom, I'm just going to paste that directory, and here I am looking at all my hair textures that I can work with. So there's a few things we need to make hair. We need opacity, we need some roughness, we need a base color, we need similar things that we worked with before, but the thing this time is really going to be looking at how opacity works. So to start this off, we want, if I start with the cap, for example, I'm going to delete this input here. When things are pink inside Blender, it means Blender can't find the image textures. So when I delete that image texture, it's turned to white because it's not looking for anything anymore. But if it's pink, it's got something missing. But to start off with, let's say we take the cap. So these things are the cap here. These can be used to work on the thing that's pulling the hair on top of the head, basically. We want this to disappear, so we'll use an opacity map for this. I'm going to take this one right here, drag this over, and then connect this opacity map that we've just dragged in and drop the color output to the alpha input of our BSDF. And now our cap space has disappeared. So like now we will just have hair underneath this, underneath the actual hairs. So these are for the cap. For the rest of the hair, we want to just go through quickly and delete these color inputs. Yeah. And side. Okay, so when these are all deleted, our hair has just turned white now, and we can start to build these materials up. So if we start with bangs 1, we can see how to build this up. So the best way to do this again is to start combining material slots. So I want bangs back. I want everything together except the cap and the hairband, basically. So the hairband, I'm going to move all the way to the bottom by selecting the hairband, dropping it down, and the cap I can drop down to the bottom as well. And then the rest of these, I'm going to start from the bottom and I'm just going to press minus and push them all into one material slot. So minus again, minus again. Now we've got one just called banks. And if I double click this, I could rename this, for example. So with all those elements combined, if I look here now and I go under and I change this color, my hair is going to be one material, my cap is going to be another material, and then I have a hairband in the back here, which I can apply again another material to. The cap though, we again want to apply this opacity map here, so choose one for the cap, drop it in. I don't know why this deleted. Anyway, okay. Same idea for the hair. So with the hair selected, let's drop in this one here. So this is called hair T for transparency, and this is going to be the texture map that turns these from ribbons into hair looking strands. So if we drag this over and put the color output of this to the alpha input, we get this looking a lot more like hair now. The issue that you'll see is that there's a lot of black space inside this that we can't see through, and that's because we need to change our light paths. So, but the way these hairs set up in Daz specifically uses this transparency workflow. And right now we've got transparency happening around the edges, but not enough in the center of this. And to fix that, we actually need to look under our render settings. So choose render properties, and on the side, scroll down to light paths. And under light paths, you've got transparent, and this is set to 8. If I set this to 16, you'll see the change this is having on my transparency right now. But if I look in, I'm still getting these artifacts and this noise. So we might need to increase this quite considerably. So if I double this again to about 32, we're getting somewhere. Maybe let's try again to 64. And this is starting to render a lot like hair. Maybe we come down a bit, let's try 50. But you'll see the render time is taking longer because it has to render 50 bounces for the transparency whilst it's rendering everything else as well. So this is the control that you're going to use to really get the best look out of this transparency. If you look on the side here, it's still having some issues. So again, let's put this back up to maybe 55. Looking a lot more like hair now, okay? Still the colors are wrong. For sure, we're going to fix this next, okay? But you see now the render time is actually quite significantly increased. What we're going to do next is add some color onto this. So the first one we're going to do is go back to the material, choose the cap, and we'll choose a base color for the cap. Let's take this kind of brown color and add this to here. And then if we use the same one again in the hair, we should start to be able to blend these things together. Yeah. The next thing we want to add is the bump map for the hair, which I think we can use in the bottom. This one, a hair B for bump. If I drop this in and I press Shift and A and I search for a bump node, turn the color space to non-color, connect the color to height and normal to normal. Very little noticeable difference, but now at least we're going to have some texture on the hair. So if you're still getting a strange result on this transparency, even with checking your light paths, check your color space as well, because you see here right now, this is looking kind of like thinning, bowling hair, let's say. But if I look at my transparency input, so the hair T for transparency, this guy right here, this color space is set to RGB, and if I set it to non-color, my hair's gonna look a lot nicer. This look a lot more like hair now, and I've got all the light passing through the transparent edges. So this will, again, is just to remember about the color space that you're using. with the node texture. So again, here color space set to non-color for the alpha, non-color for the bump, and it's set to color for the base color of the hair. The next thing we can do is add a specular. So let's take this one, so SP1, and just connect this to the specular input here. And then connect this as well to the roughness, and let's see what happens. It gets a little bit shinier, I think, but maybe we want it to look a bit more glossy. So at this point here, I'm just going to press Shift and A and search for ramp. Add a color ramp to this roughness connection here. So this is now going to control my roughness. And just take this white value and drag the white down a bit so it's dark. And if I look now on this hair, it's going to look a little bit shinier and a little bit glossier, especially in combination with the specular map as well. So again, I can push this black down a bit to make it even shinier if I want to. But now the hair should be working quite well. If you want to turn off this orange outline when you're viewing things like this object outline, go up here and where it says show overlays, click this box to turn it off, and now we're just going to look at this as a render. So my skin's working quite well, the hair's working quite well. The last thing we would want to add to this is some eyelashes. So if I turn the eyelashes on, we have obviously this opacity issue again here. So go to your eyelashes object, go to the material, and the eyelash alpha that we actually need to work with here is in the folder from before. So if I go to my original texture folder for the character, I've got an eyelashes material here called Owen eyelashes. Drop this in, drop the color to alpha, and change the color space to non-color. And we should now have some nice transparent eyelashes. What we also get with this is another eye moisture. So this is like the teardrop in the front of the eye. And again, we simply want to choose this and set this transmission all the way to full, set the roughness all the way down, and then drop the alpha a little bit so it starts to kind of feather off the look of this. And then we should have a kind of little liquid tears sat in the front of the eye, which looks quite accurate for when you have an eye, let's say. That is for some reason connected to the eyelashes, so you can turn these eyelashes on and off. And then the eyebrows are simply just a mesh. So for the eyebrows, I'm going to delete this color input and combine these three material slots. So I've got three materials for the eyebrows. I'm just going to minus them all out and then change the color to something darker, like this. Bring the roughness down so they have a little bit of shine to them. Maybe increase the specular value a little bit. Darker than that. And now I have 3D eyebrows as well as textured eyebrows. So I could just use one or the other. It's looking a lot now. So if I turn these off, maybe it's fine to just use the eyebrows that are inside the texture. So yes, this has now shown you guys how to set up your avatar, your hair, your eyelashes, your eyes, all your skin. And if I turn my visibility of my garment on now, I've got a full look with my character in the scene. This is ready to finish the environment to start rendering now. So I hope you guys learned something from this about texturing and about setting things up. If you've not done any texturing before, I'm going to put a link in the description to some other videos that should help you get started. And then hopefully this one will make a lot more sense. But right now we've got quite a nice looking skin texture applied to our character. So thanks for watching, and in the next one we're going to finalize this environment and create some renders in the end.